As a software engineer, you're going to have to become more of a code reviewer and QA type person, meaning the agent is going to write code for you, and you know it's only going to be 80% correct, but you don't know which 20% is wrong. I'm seeing a world where as we have more and more AI code generation, we're going to have more and more pair reviewing. Otherwise, we won't have any engineers with the experience of the code reviewing, because the way you get the code reviewing experience is by having written a lot of code. If I could wave my magic wand and instantly have perfect test automation, unit tests, integration tests, end-to-end tests, and it was perfect. Well, then all of a sudden, I've taken out a huge amount of risk of changing a large complex system. And so while there's promise in AI code gen helping people code faster, I actually think from a team perspective, I see more hope in going faster by reducing the risk of making problems than by just having it write the code.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AI Speedrun with Scott from Taskrabbit. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Scott was just telling me that Taskrabbit is different than all the other companies that we've talked to so far. It's a 15-year-old company, lots of history, and so the code base is a lot more complex and challenging to work with, and I'm really, really excited to hear from you.
Well, it's nice to talk today.
So a bit of a game show style. I've got 3 questions for you. I'm going to reveal them one by one. They're going to be a statement, and you're going to move this AI bubble to where you think is accurate from 1 to 5. So The first question is, AI has completely transformed our engineering team's velocity from 1, totally nothing, to 5, it's completely transformed.
Okay. Nothing to completely transformed.
And you drag over
I'm going to say for us today, it's 2.
Okay. Why is it a 2 and not a 4?
So we had some early adopters on our team who are independently gone out and found these tools and figured out how to use them. And we're just in the mode now where we are starting as an organization to systematically evaluate and deploy these kinds of things across our organization. So for instance, we have a group right now of engineers who are testing out a variety of different tools and kind of doing, let's call it evaluation and comparisons, and then evangelizing those to the rest of the team.
How much of this do you encourage or mandate? How do you see your involvement in such a transition?
I encourage a lot. I don't mandate any. I believe that these tools are here to stay. I am not yet in the camp that they are going to replace software engineers entirely, but they are tools we have. And I have been doing this for a long time. To me, it's like when IDEs came on the same, integrated development environments. There were people who didn't like IDEs at first, and now it's the standard way that we do engineering. And so I think that like AI assisted coding or reviewing code that AI agents have built or whatever, is just going to be part of our tool set. And so I really encourage my team to do it or to learn it, to do it, whatever you want to say, for their own careers. I mean, this is what someone in software engineering is going to be part of the standard tool set that people need to know how to use.
Where do you think this would be a year from now? So if we were to talk this time next year, where do you think it would be on the scale?
How did you describe 5 again?
Total transformation, night and day.
3.5.
Okay. So it's like if everyone adopts this, it's like we're going to get a little bit more acceleration from this.
Yeah, I don't think where our organization is at is like some other CTOs that I've talked to where, they have an agent writing all their stuff. I don't think we're there yet. And I don't think in a year we'll be there yet. Part of it has to do with the legacy code base that we have is challenging for a lot of these tools right now. Maybe they'll get there in a year. But I think what we'll continue to see for the next year is at least accelerated, assisted engineering on our team. And I guess the other place I think we'll start to see some is with, I'll call it satellite apps. So someone came by recently. We needed to build a little. Think of it as like a consent disclosure that people needed to sign, and it didn't really need to be integrated with the rest of our system. But someone was able to get something like Lovable to do that in a completely automated fashion for them and got it pretty close. So I think for those kinds of things, we'll start to see pretty soon. But in the main world, I think it's going to take companies like ours a little longer.
I love the term satellite apps. I've never heard that. We had the same thing at our team a couple weeks ago. The marketing team wanted to spin up a landing page,
Right.
and in the old world, that would have there would have been a little bit more orchestration, and then in this world, it was like bolt.new done.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a second question: where in the engineering stack are you seeing AI be most helpful for your team today? You can drag over the.
Well, I'll tell you today, but then I'll tell you my hopes and dreams also.
Oh, please.
I'm going to code review. That's where it's helping our team most today.
Really, not code gen, but code review.
Yeah, I actually just read a really interesting study by OpenAI, so the company behind ChatGPT. And this came out in February, so it's a few months old, which is ancient in, AI time. But they went out on Upwork and they took 1,488 jobs off of Upwork, ranging from $50 bug fixes to $32,000 entire projects. And they attempted to see how successful. Actually, they tested two of their models and they tested Claude's model on these things. And they did it in two phases. They had like an AI engineer bot that devised a solution, and they had what they called a manager bot, which was more like a tech lead bot, which evaluated whether the solution was good or not. And the manager bot, their tech lead bot, was much more effective than the coding bot. So it seems that where the technology is now is good at detecting whether a pattern someone is following, whether it's another bot or whether it's a human, is better than originating the pattern from scratch.
Ha. What are you using for code review right now in terms of AI tools?
We use a tool called Code Rabbit, which is unrelated to Taskrabbit just by coincidence that it has the same name.
Okay, so you said I'll tell you where it's most helpful today, and then I'll tell you where I hope it will be most helpful. What's the hope?
Well, this is related to your business, Danny, which is with testing. If I could have a magic wand, actually, before I tell you the magic wand, let me rewind for a second. The problem that a lot of companies have, a lot of engineers have with legacy or older systems, you know, employees and engineers have come and gone over the years. And the problem you have is you're going to change something and you don't know what you're going to break. And so you spend a lot of time on that. Or if somebody comes along and asks you what would be involved with making the system do X, Y, or Z, you don't really know. So you're very apprehensive. But if I could wave my magic wand and instantly have perfect test automation, unit tests, integration test, end-to-end tests, and it was perfect. Well, then all of a sudden I've taken out a huge amount of risk of changing a large complex system that's had a lot of engineers work on it over time. And so while there's promise in AI code gen helping people code faster, I actually think as a from a team perspective, I see more hope in making going faster by reducing the risk of making problems than by just having it write the code. I'm not saying we won't have it write the code, but if I could have that today, it would make this team and previous teams' lives so much better.
Right, it's like move fast with confidence.
Exactly.
That's so cool. Right, right. What we do now is we spend a lot of time planning every code change.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could just test and make sure nothing else is broken in sort of a perfectly scalable test auto repair themselves as the code base changes,
Mm-hmm.
then engineering would go a lot faster.
Yeah, we spend so much time trying not to make mistakes because we don't totally understand our systems, and we don't totally understand them because they're big, they're complex, lots of people have worked on them. You can't hold it all in your head. I mean, that's what pushed people towards these microservices, so you could hold them all in your head. But we don't, there are lots of systems out there that are not microservices. So I've gotten whiffs of a few companies trying to solve that testing problem, and we're going to do some evaluation of those later this year. But to me, I have a lot of hope in that area.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Okay, one last one, which is AI has changed the skills we hire for on the engineering team.
For us, today, the answer is no. It really hasn't made a difference. But that's also because we have not been doing a lot of hiring. I think it's going to change the skills a lot. And in some ways, as a software engineer, you're going to have to become more of a code reviewer and QA type person, meaning the bot, the agent is going to write code for you, and you're going to have to, and you know it's only going to be 80% correct, but you don't know which 20% is wrong. So you're going to have to be good at getting familiar with that quickly and knowing how to observe those problems. And I think that's going to change a lot of how this job works.
I interviewed Ichasethi, the VP of engineering on Vanta, and she said the exact same thing. She said, in the past, we really thought about how do they write code. And now we're starting to realize we actually need people who are really, really good at reviewing code. And they've changed their interviewing process to actually make that a step, the way that we have like pair programming challenges.
That's right. And you know what's interesting? You mentioned pair programming. We're going to have to start actually having pair reviewing. And I've had peer reviewing at previous companies I've worked at. We don't really have that peer reviewing type of culture here. But if you think about it, as your less experienced engineers on your team are coming up and gaining experience, the only way they're going to get to be good reviewers is to do it with people who are more experienced and who are better reviewers. And so
Hmm.
I'm seeing a world where as we have more and more AI code generation, we're going to have more and more pair reviewing. Otherwise, we won't have any engineers with the experience of the code reviewing, because the way you get the code reviewing experience is by having written a lot of code.
That is That's so interesting. The thing that it made me think of is there's a big crisis right now if you're like a new grad or like junior engineer, because the junior engineering jobs are sort of going away. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do? How do you possibly start in this industry? And you're like, the same way that junior engineers join teams and do pair programming and level up, they're going to join teams and do pair reviewing, and they're going to level up that way.
That's right. I mean, we're in the very top of like the very beginning of this whole thing. One person I was chatting with on LinkedIn referred to this as an industrial revolution. You know, we just went through an information revolution over like the last 30 years, and now we're going to potentially go through another one. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds.
On that note, Scott, thank you so, so much for joining me. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.